Okay, so it is the next day, and as you can imagine, all that hard work yesterday paid off. The Kevlar epoxy mix, absolutely a super strong mix. Made sure I rolled the edges real good, and I tell you what, this Kevlar is just really neat. Really neat. And I tell you, when you look at this in the sunlight, it just has a really neat, very unique look. If you're used to using 1708 and just chopped strand bi-axial type fiberglass and you go to Kevlar, awesome, really awesome results here. So what we're going to do next is what I refer to as the bowling pin. If you've seen my transom rebuild in the past with fiberglass, I actually cut it out ahead of time. This time what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it afterwards, and we'll kind of measure some of the pros and cons. If you've got any questions about my other transom rebuild video where I used fiberglass 1708, I'll link that in here as well so you can kind of see it. But this time around I specifically did not go with the bowling pin being cut out ahead of time, just so we can kind of see what some of the pros and cons are. So since this thing is completely dried, cured overnight, we're going to go ahead and bring it in the boat, and we'll go ahead and start marking it and working on cutting out the bowling pin. I'm not sure how it's going to work. This may be almost impossible to cut through. We'll see. But I've got a few different type of blades that I'm going to try to use. A few different methods I'll go over, and then I'll tell you which one works the best here as we progress through this video. Man, I'll tell you what, that yellow is sharp. You see on the left side there I made a mark because obviously when you're using popsicle sticks, not both sides are going to be perfectly equal. So what I did was I allowed a 1/2 inch, it's a 1/2 inch bolt on that side and 1/2 inch on this side. I've got 5 popsicle sticks on each to make sure I've got enough space underneath to add some of the, what I refer to as the peanut butter mix. And you'll see a little mix on a little gap on top that I left, so I can create a little joint there so I can attach it on top without having to worry about water getting through the transom on the back side. Then the sides as well, so we'll be able to taper the sides real well. So everything as far as from when the template was put in and taken and cut out and everything was coated with Kevlar, looks great. 0 issues so far. I'm not sure if it appears this way, but when you look at the Kevlar on camera, it actually looks kind of fuzzy. I saw this on a video I was looking at yesterday. So if it looks like the camera's having trouble focus, it's something to do with the way the Kevlar appears on camera. So it's really kind of weird and neat at the same time. Maybe a little bit annoying, but just stick through it as we're looking and reviewing these videos, because we're going to see a lot more Kevlar, and if it becomes an issue, I may have to look into getting a different camera here because it's kind of strange. So anyway, what I'm going to do now is, obviously I want to make sure this is fully seated all the way to the back. We've got our little makeshift spacer on that side, 1/2 inch on that side, 5 popsicle sticks on each. The gap really isn't that big of a deal because wherever the transom gets cut out, it's going to get lined up in terms of the center. So even if it is pitched a little bit left or right, it doesn't matter. I've allowed enough tolerance on either side, so we'll get it lined up. So obviously, as you can imagine, the center is most important. Let's go ahead and take a look from the other side and see what it looks like. Phew, tell you what, that is an awesome thing to see. It's kind of interesting because this is old school fiberglass, and that is really awesome, badass Kevlar. Pretty excited about that. So anyway, the trick here is nothing fancy. What we're going to do is just take a marker and mark around where that is. You can see where the old live well pump used to be. That's getting coated. Covered up. This will get glassed over. We'll bring out the grinder and we'll grind this gel coat around here. And you'll see some of the peanut butter will actually kind of drip out anyway. But yeah, we're gonna grind this area off, just where the finish is. We'll re-glass it and then repaint it. You'll never even know that was there. And then this will end up getting drilled out. Probably part of this, we'll probably end up drilling it out as we're cutting the bowling pin. More than likely we'll do that too. You can kind of see I left a little gap here, so we'll probably end up just making a U. So you can kind of see daylight. We'll probably more likely just make a U right there and then glass around that. So we'll kind of see. I'll decide what we're going to end up doing there. But it looks pretty good so far. So let's go ahead and get that marker out and trace this thing out. Now, one thing to note here, because I've actually just kind of been thinking after I shot this part of the video, I said, you know, I really don't like how this isn't lower. So you know what I ended up doing was I ended up taking out the popsicle sticks at the bottom just to kind of see what it looked like, how much lower it sat. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit it all the way at the bottom, because Kevlar is so strong anyway. It being bonded lower into the bottom of the boat here probably would help with the overall strength around this corner. So I'm actually going to go ahead and keep it, I'm going to keep it down as low as I can. I did still space it on the outsides here, but I did drop the whole transom down. You'll see the material that we use when we tighten it up against this outer shell. It'll all start gooping out, and there'll be plenty of coverage underneath there. I'm not worried about that at all. So, little change there, little impromptu change. You'll see it as we move to the next part of the video, how there's no popsicle sticks there. There's still good space on each side, but just no popsicles. So anyway, let's go ahead and get a marker, and we'll trace a little hole out for the bilge area, and then we'll trace this out. I'm probably not going to drill out the holes for the transom plate. I kind of do that last, just because that's what I did last time. Could technically drill them now, but I'm going to wait till last. So, but I'll go ahead and get this traced out first. Okay, easy enough. Went and traced out all along the edges. And let's go ahead now and get this transom out, and we'll cut this hole. Alright, so you'll see here I brought in the inner, it's kind of like the rear motor mounts, or it could be the rear transom mount. I forgot what the official term is. But the reason I brought this out is to make sure, before you get too crazy, is that you have enough meat on top to support the motor itself. So you'll notice here, we still got plenty of meat on the board, because as you saw, I cut it short, and the designers of the boat, you want to make sure they didn't mess anything up. So where the top is, that's where your steering swings left and right. This will actually get cut out on this side. I've got a little template that I saved originally. I think we talked about it. But yeah, the main thing here is you still have adequate space at the top of the transom. So just a quick go, no go. Alright, so here's some of the things you're going to need. You've got the trace where the bowling pin's going. You need a drill bit, preferably somewhere around, I don't know, 3/8 to 1/2 inch, something like that. You're going to drill in these corners. Everywhere that you have to make almost a 90-degree turn, you're going to want to drill, because you're not going to be able to make some of these turns. And also, I'll show you as well, we're going to make some specific We're going to drill specifically in certain spots too, just to make sure as you're going through the transom that you're going through straight. Which brings me to my next point. If you've never checked to make sure because we're going to be using a jigsaw. If you never checked to make sure your jigsaw is perfectly at a 90-degree angle, now's your chance to do it. I've got a speed square, and I mean, it doesn't take a speed square to see here. This is not level. This looks like it's been dropped. Okay. So after a little adjusting there, looks like I got it pretty well changed up there, so that's good. As you're doing this yourself, periodically take your jigsaw and just look at it, because it happened to me once, and the jigsaw was cutting at a really significant pitch. Like it was cutting into the transom almost like at that kind of angle, and by the time it makes it through the other side, it creates a problem. The reason it creates an issue is because your bolt holes I should have marked them for reference. They're really close to here. So if it's straight on this side, by the time it goes on the other end, it could actually cut into some of the positions where the bolts are supposed to go, and that's not good. You have to get creative on ways to fix that. So just keep an eye out on your jigsaw as you're cutting to make sure it's cutting straight all the way through. If you take it slow, you'll notice it tends to work a little bit better too. I got a few different types of blades for this. I've got some metal blades, of course, since this material epoxy is pretty hard. So I'm going to try each one. I'll let you know which one I recommend. But I've got a few different ones. But I know just regular, as you've seen throughout this video, anything that's rated for just regular softwood isn't going to work. So typically everything is going to be needed to be rated for metal use. So I'll go ahead and take this blade out, since I'm not really sure what it is and all the marking's been out. The other thing I'm going to do is make some good drill points as well, and we're going to drill in these corners. Okay, so for cutting the bowling pin out, there's a little trick, and it kind of depends on what type of jigsaw you have, and it also may depend too on what type of blade. So I'm using the metal, thin metal basic. It's basically it's got a lot of teeth on it. You'll go through them, maybe to do this whole thing, it'll probably take you 2 to go through it. But basically I was doing some testing here, because I was wondering if it's the same thing with epoxy and Kevlar as it was with fiberglass, and it looks like it's the same. So I'm using a Black & Decker jigsaw, and here's what I found. The blade likes to go, when I'm using it on a perfectly flat surface, even though it's been set up and I use a speed square, I found that it likes to cut to the right, which isn't a big deal, because right now we're looking at the back of the boat, and if it likes to cut into the right, that means it's cutting into the material of the bowling pin, which is fine. We're getting rid of it anyway. But if it were to cut into the material this way, then it would actually start cutting into where the bolt holes go right here, and we don't want to have that happen. So the way that you need to do it is you need to start cutting. I drill these holes here, so I got a baseline of knowing which way it's cutting, and it's the same thing as it did on the fiberglass version of this that I did. So it likes to cut basically to the right. So if you know that, what you need to do is cut in a certain direction. So like I cut all the way over here, and then coming back I cut this way. So this way you know you're not cutting into where bolt holes go. So if you do that to get this bowling pin out, it's going to be really easy. So just make sure you get a pack here. I got a 5-pack. I've gone through 2 so far to get this out, and then you'll notice it'll have it'll be a cut inwards, which is not a big deal. We're going to take the grinder and grind these flat anyway, but make sure you want to have all your material around the edge and not lose any of that. So definitely be cognizant of that when you're using your jigsaw. And just to reinforce that point here, this is where the steering arm goes. So you'll have, like I said earlier, you have 2 bolts that get drilled through there. But see, this bolt actually gets really close to the line here. That's more accurate. And see, you don't really have much play if you're not careful. So that's the whole reason why I say to make sure you understand which way your jigsaw is cutting. Okay. So on that note, I'll go ahead and finish cutting this out. Just make sure you pay attention to what I said as you're drilling. You want to drill in this direction. And it may depend too on your jigsaw that you're using. Yours may cut perfectly straight. You know, mine for whatever reason doesn't like to. So there you go. Okay, so we've got it cut all the way around. And if you're wondering if you did it right, the easiest way to tell is when you're done cutting, it'll fall down just a little bit, but it won't fall all the way through. If you marked it like I did, and you cut it like I did, and you're using a Black & Decker, or my type of setup here, where it cuts like this, if you did it right, it won't fall through. You actually have to pull it up from the other way, and that's because of the way that the cut was made. And it's just a side effect of my jigsaw. So anyway, this was done right because it will not fall through. It has to come up the other side. I know, it's a weird jigsaw thing. I don't get it, but that's how we do it. So that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. I hope you liked it. Stay tuned with me as we're diving deeper into the transom build. You can see here this transom looks absolutely spectacular. All the layers look just fabulous. I hope you continue your journey with me here. If you're not a member already, subscribe. If you like the video, hit that thumbs up button. I know a lot of people watching these videos are not subscribers, so I'm going to keep saying it until those subscribers keep hitting that subscribe button and watching this thing. As always, have a good one, and we'll catch you on the next episode.